Good morning, church. Wow, that's really hot. We're going to turn that back a little bit. Happy Father's Day. Fathers, I guess that's me too. Happy Father's Day to me. That's awesome. I love Father's Day. There were 5 children whose father had won a toy at a raffle at work, and he brought it home. And, of course, he walks in the door. His 5 kids come running. They see the toy in his hand, and he decides, okay, which of you is going to get the toy? For those of you who have one child, you have absolutely no idea the turmoil that is involved when you bring something like that home. Okay, if you have more than one, then it always becomes an issue. So, nonetheless, these 5 kids are standing there, and the dad decides, okay, we're gonna have a little contest to see who gets the toy. So he asks them, okay, who's the most obedient? Who never talks back to mom? Who does everything mom always says? And at which point, all the 5 little kids just kind of turn around and start to walk off. And the oldest turns around and goes, yeah, Dad, we know. You get to keep the toy. Today is the day that we honor fathers, and so we will. But since I didn't preach a Mother's Day sermon on Mother's Day, moms, this includes you as well. Not as an afterthought, okay? In all seriousness, we all are to honor our parents. But we're to honor them not because it's a holiday, not because it's a tradition, not because it's an occasion for every department store to have sales for the weekend, but we do so because God said so. It's not because it's tradition. God very clearly and very specifically told us in His Word, honoring our parents is a good thing to do. As a matter of fact, in Ephesians chapter 6, Paul will tell us this: children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Notice it doesn't say honor the good moms and honor the good dads. It doesn't say honor them if you like them. It doesn't say honor them if they give you everything that you want. It says honor your father and mother. So regardless of that, we are to honor our parents, period. And I want to speak directly to the parents today. So if you're not a parent, don't check out, because this will apply to you as well. And if you're a grandparent, it applies to you, or an aunt or an uncle. Or if you're a member of this body, it applies to you. Because the reality is, and let me just say right off the bat, okay? Because I know the tendency is on Mother's Day, you preach these wonderful flowing sermons about how wonderful mothers are and we can't live without them and they do everything for us and they're just great and blah, 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 right? And then on Father's Day, you get a sermon that tells dads about how worthless they are and how they need to buck up and how they need to do a better job and yada, yada, yada. You get that, right? So, okay, I'm not going to do either today, all right? But what I am going to do is talk to you about something very serious, because at present in our world, at present in our culture, at present in the Lord's church, there is a war going on, a battle. And it's not over property, it's not over some land in Ukraine, it's not about some Middle Eastern country. There is a war that is being fought every single day, and it is for our own kids' souls. And if you have children, if you have grandchildren, if you have nieces, if you have nephews, if you have friends, if you have acquaintances who have children, you understand this full well. We are at war. And the battleground is our homes. And what's at stake is not land or property or freedom. What's at stake is the faithfulness of our children. And I'm sorry to say, we're losing the battle. And I'm not talking about us here specifically, but what I am telling you is this: children are turning from their faith in record numbers. It's as if as soon as they leave home and go to college, and they just leave the church and they leave their faith. And you may not think that happens, but I guarantee you, if you've been here long enough, you can look around this auditorium and you know of children, you know of kids who have grown up here, who have participated here, who no longer are faithful. Am I right? It's saddening. But it doesn't just happen here. It's happening all over the world. Kids in record numbers are turning from God. They're abandoning their faith. And it's nothing new. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not blaming this on today's culture, because it's always happened. It has always been the case. The war started as soon as Adam and Eve walked out of the garden. I want to give you a little background of where we're going today. I want to give you a really brief biblical story that's going to kind of be our guide for the remaining time we have today. It's brief. It's found in the book of Judges, so if you want to be turning over to it, we'll be in Judges chapter 2 to begin. The nation of Israel has just marched into the promised land, into Canaan, and they were settling into the land. Although as they moved into it, their occupation of Canaan was not a complete victory. They didn't completely do what God wanted them to do, and sometimes they settled into areas that caused them to compromise. And the passage we're going to look at in Judges chapter 2, Israel has compromised to some degree. God has called them to task, and they have repented and turned back to God. Okay? And in Judges chapter 2, starting in verse 6, I just want to read this text. If I can get it to go there. There we go. When Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went each to his inheritance to take possession of the land. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. And they buried him within the boundaries of his inheritance in Timnath-Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of the mountain of Gash. Whoops, wrong way. There we go. And all that generation also were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. And they abandoned the Lord and the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went after other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were around them, and they bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord's anger. Once Joshua and his generation had passed away, the very next generation turned their back on God and worshiped the gods of the peoples around them. I said, again, it's nothing new, but the difference in 2023, kids no longer wait for their moms and dads to pass. They don't wait for them to pass away. They turn immediately away, and they begin worshiping the God of television, or the God of fashion, or the God of convenience, or the God of social media, or the God of fitness or technology. It's the God of this world, and the worship of the God of this world is what John describes in 1 John 2:16, when he says, "For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but it is from the world." There's a passage in Romans chapter 1 that closely parallels what's going on in America today. The progression of sin, the progression of that abandonment of God, and the ramifications of it. If you got your Bibles, go to Romans chapter 1. I don't have that one up here. We're just going to have to read it. Romans chapter 1. You're familiar with this passage. Beginning in verse 28. Since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They're full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. I hope you realize, and parents, I hope you realize this morning that your kids are surrounded, that you are surrounded. We're all surrounded by a culture that actually approves of turning your back on God. Matter of fact, in a lot of places it's lauded, it's applauded, it's celebrated. From court cases to TV to popular movies. It's okay to make fun of religion. It's okay to make fun of God. Because anymore it's not important. It's not relevant. It might have worked for mom and dad, but it doesn't work for me. Well, I can tell you this morning, mom and dads, you are at the front lines in this war, and it is a war. And we are called to be a part of it, not to be spectators of it, but to fight in it. And we have to understand that God has blessed us with an enormous gift, and that being the gift of children. And He has placed them in our care to protect them. He has placed them in our care to assure their place in heaven with us. And it is a battle. And this morning I want to give you your marching orders, so to speak, to tackle this important task of saving our kids. And we're going to look briefly at a few steps that will help us to do so. But here's what I want to encourage you with today. We can win this war. Scripture tells us we can win this war. This is not a battle we have to just throw our hands up and say, okay, I surrender because I don't have the tools or I don't have the means to win. We can win. We can win this. And the first way we will win it is with our words. If we can get there. There we go. A few Wednesday nights ago, Jared did a Devo on this very passage, not knowing I was going to preach on it this morning. But given what's at stake, I don't think we can hear it too much. So if you got your Bibles, go to Deuteronomy chapter 6. You know it well. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. These words, listen, right off the bat, he throws in, he uses this word, words. Words are important. Words have meaning. Words have value. And he knows this. These words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. You need to be talking to your kids. Be involved in their lives. You need to be telling them about God and tell them about the Bible. We've talked about this before, many, many times before, actually. Focusing on what God has done for you in your life. It ought to be a daily part of your routine, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. Anytime you have the opportunity to be bringing God into every conversation you can. This is how God has affected your mom and I. This is how God has affected me. This is what I learned from the Bible when dealing with this kind of situation. Are you talking with your words to your kids about God? That's how you will win this war. But if you never open your mouth to them about it, if you spend more time talking about what's happening downtown Pensacola or how life was at the beach or who won what football game or what's going on the golf match, if you spend more time talking about that than you do with God, guess where their priority is going to be? On those things as well. A study was recently done to determine the amount of interaction between fathers and their small children. This is about dads here. First, the fathers were asked to estimate the amount of time they spent each day communicating with their child. Okay? They asked dads, how much time do you think talking one-on-one to your kids? The average answer was between 15 to 20 minutes. Okay? Dad said, I usually spend 15 to 20 minutes talking to my kids. Now, what was interesting about this study was after they asked the fathers, how much time do you spend talking to your kids? They said, okay. Then they wired them up with mics. And the fathers had to keep the mics on for a week. And as they interacted with their kids, it was mic'd, it was recorded, and then these researchers went back and actually added up how much time they actually spent. 37 seconds a day. What they thought was 15 to 20 minutes in their minds of communicating with their kids translated to 37 seconds. Their direct interaction was limited to 2.7 encounters a day of less than 10 seconds apiece. Back at Deuteronomy 6. Can you accomplish that in 37 seconds a day? You cannot. Do you want to know how much time culture has with your kids? A whole lot more than that. Who's winning that battle? Communicate with your kids. Tell them about God. Tell them about the Bible. And kids, let me talk to you for a minute. And when I say kids, I'm talking about anybody who's just been born to the age of 40. They're all kids to me still. Okay? All right? Listen to your parents. They're not stupid. Okay? I know you think because we can't open a PDF, we don't know anything, or if we don't know how to merge all of the different Marvel universes together in a cohesive way, that we're stupid. Okay? I know that's a, but get this. Okay? I know you think we're not smart, because in our world today, Bill Gates is smart, Elon Musk is smart, Stephen Hawking is smart, Edward Whitten is smart. Edward Whitten probably the smartest man on the planet, they say. But nonetheless, everybody's got these ideas. Oh, man, that must be brilliant. These guys are smart. Dad, not so much. Right? Let me ask you, when you're broke down on the side of the road and you don't know how to change a tire, who do you call? Elon Musk won't answer your phone. Try calling Elon Musk when your tire's flat. Okay? The smartest man to ever walk the planet, according to the Bible, was a man by the name of Solomon. And Solomon, the smartest man ever to live, said this, "My son, hear your father's instruction and forsake not your mother's teaching." Kids, I can just say that the smartest thing you can do if you have Christian parents is to listen to your parents. Don't let the schools be the only thing that instruct your kids. Don't even let this church be the only thing that instructs your kids. And that's not an indictment on the teaching ministry of this church. But mom and dad, the church is not responsible for raising your kids. You are. The church is not responsible for the biblical training of your kids. You are. We will do everything in our power. I guarantee you that. We will give you every resource. We will give you every tool. We will support you. We will encourage you in every way possible for you to do your job, which is to train your children. When Proverbs 22 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it, that's not an instruction to the church. That's an instruction to parents. That's how we win the war. We talk to them about Bible things. How are you doing with your words? You can win the war with your words, but you can also win the war with your time. One father said that he chose to fail so that he could succeed. He said, I chose to fail at golf because I wanted to succeed as a father. Though he loved golf immensely, he knew that he could never devote adequate time to his job and his hobby and his family, so he gave up his hobby. Parents, are you prepared to give up your hobby for the sake of your kids, if need be? I'm not telling you not to have a hobby, but I'm telling you this, if your hobby is more important than your kids, you need to take a hard look at your priorities. How are you doing with your time? Look again back to Deuteronomy chapter 6. Look at what 7 says, 7 through 9. You shall teach them diligently to your children. Those words, you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand. They shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Folks, this requires time. You say, I don't have time. Well, what's important in your life? Look at your day timer, look at your phone, look at your schedule, and see where your time is devoted to, and that will tell you what you love, what is most important in your life. Unfortunately, today, many parents say that by their time, if you looked at their time, oh, they love their jobs, they love their hobbies, they love their entertainment, they love their comfort. And if you ask them, oh, yeah, I love my kids more than anything. Not according to the time you're spending on them, you don't. And some have bought into the thinking of this world. Well, I've got to keep working and working and working and working so I can provide for them the finer things of this world. Man, it takes a lot to send them to college. It takes a lot for them to play sports. It takes a lot for them to do all these things. And you know what? You're right. It's a requirement. It is an expectation of fathers, of parents to provide for their kids. It's a God-given task. As a matter of fact, 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And I think we have taken this verse and we have misapplied it into an area of greed that says, okay, because God says I have to provide at this level up here, and I have to give them everything they want. They've got to have the best education, the best car, the best experience, the best trips, the best everything, because I'm supposed to provide. I think we're missing the boat. We go beyond what is necessary. It's a story about a man who asked his daughter if she would want quality time with him or quantity time with him. Which do you want? His daughter looked at him and she said, I want quality time, Dad, and I want a lot of it. We chuckle, but it's true. It's true. And sometimes parents, I know this is sometimes, listen, Dana and I have raised 6 kids. Okay? We got 8 3/4 grandkids. 8 3/4. We'll have 9 here in September. I know it's not easy. It's not easy when they look at you like you have stupid written across the top of your forehead, and absolutely everything that comes out of your mouth just goes in one ear and right out the other. And they look at you like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You know what? It doesn't matter what they do. Make time for them. Even if they're miserable, even if they complain about, oh, do we have to go do this again? Yes, you have to go do it again. Why? Because you're going to do it with me. You're going to spend time with me. You're going to spend time with your mom. You're going to spend time with us. I don't care if you don't like it. And if you really want to make their day, you wrap them all up and take them to a nursing home and let them just walk around and greet people. They will absolutely hate you for it. And they'll probably end up loving the experience. But you understand what I'm saying. Here's the problem. In today's culture, little Johnny says, I don't want to do that. And the parents go, okay, then we won't do that. Let's go find something else. Can we do this? I don't want to do that either. Okay, well, let's find out something out over here. Well, how about this, little Johnny? No, I don't want to do that. Okay, what do you want to do, little Johnny? I want to go play with my car. Okay, well, let's go play with your cars. I don't want you to come. I just want to play by myself. Right? And the parents, it's the tails wagging the dog. Parents, you've been given children not so that your children can tell you what to do, so that you can train them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. That's your job. Your job is not to make little Johnny happy. Your job is not to make little Johnny the best athlete in the world. Your job is not to make him the smartest kid in school. Your job is not to make him the best looking kid in the school. My mother she got all of them though, you know. But anyway, that's not your job. Your job is to make sure your kids are brought up in the nurture and admonition of God. That's your primary job. Everything else is secondary. And that takes time. And there may be some things in your life that you have to say, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. We're not going to spend the time on this anymore. But listen, if you want to win the war, you're going to have to dedicate the time to do it. And don't get me wrong, please don't get me wrong. I'm looking around at a lot of awesome parents in this room today, and please don't think I'm giving you an indictment that you're not doing what you need to be doing. I'm trying to encourage you to say, listen, this war is winnable. I don't want to see another kid leave Scenic Hills and leave the faith, period. I don't care what we have to do as a church. I want to empower you as parents. I want to empower us as a body. I want to make sure and be bold and be confident to know that when our kids walk out of these doors into that world, they are prepared for the battle that they will be facing, and that we have given them everything they need to be faithful. I don't want to stand before God one day and say, you know what, I wish I would have done this, but I just didn't. Let's leave it all out there on the table. The last thing, we will win the war with our lives. There's a passage in Genesis 18 I want to take you to real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. Genesis 18, verses 18 and 19 is kind of a revealing passage. It says this, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised. The way you live your life will be a direct reflection of how your children will grow up. What is important to you will become important to them. If technology is the most important thing in your household, it will be the most important thing to your kids. If sports is the most important thing in your household, it will become the most important thing to your kids. If television is the most important thing in your household, it will become the most important thing to your kids. If social media and your face glued to a phone is the most important thing to you, it will become the most important thing to your kids. As you live, so will they. They will make whatever priorities you set, their priorities. You are making little copies of yourself, whether you know it or not. There's a song that talks about a parent's reason for wanting to be like God, and it has to do with their kids. And the words go something like this. The name of the song is I Want to Be Just Like You. And the words are, if I can get them up here. Here we go. Just listen to this, parents, and see if this doesn't resonate with you about how you feel about your kids as they watch you. I want to be just like you. This is a parent talking to God. I want to be just like you because He wants to be just like me. I want to be a holy example for His innocent eyes to see. Help me be a living Bible, Lord, that my little boy can read. I want to be just like you because He wants to be just like me. It's kind of like this situation. A little boy was caught by his mother using a word that was not acceptable. Okay? The mother whipped around after hearing it come out of his mouth and said, "Young man, where did you learn to talk that way?" As his father walked into the room, the little boy turned around and said, "Well, Dad, should I tell her?" Anybody ever been guilty of that? Yeah. We're making copies of ourselves. 2 Kings 14:3 says this, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Why? He did in all things as Joash, his father, had done. What kind of example are you setting for your kids with your life? Your words may say some things about you, but your life declares who you really are. And you have to ask yourself, am I fighting the war with my life, or am I just giving it lip service? We can win this war, but it will take us all fighting for our children, all of us. It will take us all fighting with our words, with our time, and with our lives. Let me wrap this up. Let me speak to the kids just real quick. Let me just say something to all of you right now, okay? Life isn't always what we want it to be. Life isn't always what's best. And life isn't always pleasing to God. And some of you today, I don't know all of your stories, but there may be some of you here this morning who have awesome fathers and mothers. And some of you may have fathers and mothers who just aren't all that great, or maybe not even in your lives at all. And you're asking, okay, on a day like today, how can I honor a father or a mother who's not even here? Or when it's difficult, how can you go through life without a good father? Let me suggest something to you this morning. God calls this church family for a reason. And here this morning, there are a lot of good, godly parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters. And I would suggest if you need parental influence in your life and you don't have it, there's somebody here who can fill that bill. There's somebody here who would gladly step into that role in your life. Because as the family of God, and let me just say this, and I probably won't, I'll get a letter or two about this, if that's okay. Let me just say this. The family of God supersedes your biological family. The family of God is more important than your biological family. And let me tell you why. Your biological family may or may not spend eternity with you. Your spiritual family will. It will. And as such, this spiritual body here that meets, exceeding, that kills, we have as our responsibility all of these kids. Yes, you may have birthed them biologically, but spiritually they're just as much mine as they are yours. And I care about them, and I will do everything in my power to make sure they end up in heaven. I just want your help. And what I'm telling you kids is if you don't have that parental influence, there's a bunch of them. You just come up to me and say, hey, I need a dad. I need a mom. And I know I'm not making an offer for you to move in with anybody. I just got rid of my last one, and I'm not taking any boarders for the time being. Unless you really need it. But what I'm saying is simply this. There are people in this body who can step into that role and help you as a mom, as a dad. And kids, let me tell you something. You can't talk to your mom and dad. I get that. Sometimes they're the hardest people in the world to talk to. There's a whole bunch of other people you can talk to. Just don't talk to social media before you consult somebody in the family of God. That's what I'm telling you. And we will win this war together. There's one of my favorite scenes, and it's a football movie. Remember the Titans. How many of you seen Remember the Titans? One of my favorite movies of all time. There's a scene, and they're in the championship game, and there's some stuff going on with the refs, and they're trying to call it badly. And anyway, the defensive coordinator gets them all together on the sidelines, and he's mad. And he looks at them all and he says, from this point on, we are not going to give them one more yard. Not one more, not a yard, not one more yard. From this point on, we're going to buckle down, not one more yard. And he says, if you can't do that, get out. And one of them does, if you remember the movie. Not one more yard. That's my call to us today. Not one more kid is going to walk out these doors and lose their faith. We're going to draw a line in the sand and say we're going to do everything we can. And guess what? Kids, you may not like what we do. Tough. We know what's right. We know what's best. That's why God calls us parents and not kids. We want to protect you because there is a battle going on for your souls, and we don't want to lose it. It was a typical scenario. Boys being boys, debating whose father was the best. The discussion highlighted whose father knew who. The first boy started by debating, oh, well, my dad knows the mayor. And and then another little boy stood up and says, well, that's nothing. My dad knows the governor. Nobody would dare say they knew the president, so they just went on. But one little boy sitting in the back stood up and said, I got you all beat. My dad knows God. Would your kids say the same thing about you? Would your kids look at you and be proud of you because they know you know God? Because you talk about it, you spend time talking about it, you dedicate your life to it. Does that describe you today? How are you fighting the battle? This morning we're going to sing a song. Maybe you need the prayers of this church. Man, folks, this is what church is about. You need help parenting, you need help. Ask. You don't have to do this all by yourself. You don't have to do this alone. We're here to help one another. There's enough gray hair and no hair people sitting out here that they have been through the experiences that you've been through. They can help. All you got to do is ask. Maybe you'd like the elders to pray over you or for you in this situation. Whatever you need, we invite you to come. Let us know as we stand and as we sing.